we are so obsessed with women, if at all we think of women, we are obsessed with them when they're young and of a certain kind of beauty, and preferably of an upper class. I don't belong to any of those groups. Once a woman's body and a reproductive function begins to shut down, it seems like her life has been pushed to a zone of disinterest. It fascinates me. It fascinates me how society cares so little for the desire of an older woman and is so uncomfortable with it. He would listen, but after some time he would just like, listen, stop being such a Meena Kumari, this tragedy queen. He said, no one likes being around someone who is sad and pathetic. So get over it. It's tough for everybody. Every day, countless people go through extremely indignifying situations just on their way to work daily, and yet have a sense of composure. What is that, man, if not dignity?
Hello everyone, welcome to Filmkopath. Today we have with us an actor who has consistently brought depth, authenticity and quiet power to her characters, breaking stereotypes of Indian cinema along the way. We have the incredibly talented Tillotama Shome with us today. From a memorable debut in Monsoon Wedding to critically acclaimed films like Qissa, Sir and The Death in the Ganj, Tillotama's body of work reflects her brilliance in portraying complex, layered characters. This is Tillotama's 25th year in cinema that we plan to celebrate in this session as we look back at some of her exemplary works as well as discuss about her exciting upcoming projects. Thank you, Tillotama, for joining us today. We are incredibly happy to have you with us.
Thank you so much for this introduction. I feel like I'm dead and someone is reading out my obituary. This is
many more years to come.
It has been so awesome to see your work for over the years, and that's my first question, because 25 years is indeed a pretty long time. So how do you reflect back on this journey, like starting from Monsoon Wedding up till now in cinema?
It's such a dialectic pull between still feeling like one is starting out, because my entry into OTT is just 5-6 years old.
Right.
I was such a latecomer, like a late bloomer in everything in life, and including my entry into OTT. My colleagues and friends had already done multiple seasons of things on OTT when I entered with Delhi Crime, and before that with Sir, which was not made for OTT but later sold to Netflix. So in one sense, I feel like a 6-year-old who's just starting out. And it's a very recent phenomena for me to have an audience that watches my work whose numbers are mind-boggling and still not something I can wrap my brain around, because I'm so used to, of these 25 years, for almost 20 of these 25 years, working in fiercely independent films that were shot in India. The stories were deeply Indian, and yet nobody in my own country saw it, or very few people did. And I had made my peace with that being my journey, until Sir came and toppled things, because the audience connected to a film like that, even though it had no stars. So on one hand, I feel like a 6-year-old, and on the other hand, I am a middle-aged person at 45, going through immense changes in my body and mind. Sometimes I do feel that I'm 45, and then sometimes I feel I'm just 6 years old. So it's a tension between these two things.
Right. I mean, actually, viewers, we did a video essay on Sir. Probably you will watch it someday. And that was because we started off 4 years back as a channel. That was one of probably kind of a video which got us some attention. It also worked for us in that way. Because I think Rohena Gera retweeted it, I think.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well, it was the film that got me attention that I wasn't used to. That scale,
Yes.
it's something else, and I'm still not used to it. Yeah.
My next question to you is that we have seen and read your interviews, and one of the things that strike us the most is that you said you have played a lot of marginalized characters, and you said the least you can do is portray them with the right gaze and in a dignified way, which doesn't make it look exploitative. This is such a relevant observation, especially in a classist society like India, where we are mostly unaware of our own privilege. How do you strike the fine balance of like acting as the script requires you to, and you also being aware of the gaze? Like, is this something that comes naturally to you, or do you remind yourself of this when you're playing the character?
I think it's there in the script. It's the script demands that. I mean, when you play a character like that, what would be your first thought other than the politics of representation when you don't belong to a particular class? It would be your first thought, right? Much later, I will think about how she walks and how she, what is the quality of her voice. Uh, কি মানে কোন ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজে কথা বলতে হবে, like depending on the script, like what language do I have to learn, or dialect. All those are external considerations that come much later, but it's in the script itself. The politics of class is in the script. If it's not in the script, there's nothing an actor can really do. um, and because I got scripts like that written by amazing people who are as interested in the grayness of this kind of conflict, and that it was always, and I think it'll always be the first consideration for an actor, especially when you are portraying a class or a place that you don't belong to. Because if you didn't, the question that would naturally arise is why her, when there's so many of us, and it's a totally valid question. And I would ask the same. Then why did you cast this actor when there are so many of us who better represent this, um, this person? So if you don't want to be asked that question, and you are being hired because a director has some sort of affinity in your way of acting, then it is, it is utterly my responsibility then, that I work hard in being able to work hard so that that question doesn't come up. But it's a valid question, and I think if I don't do my homework, that's a very valid question that will be asked, and it's something one will have to just fess up that, yeah, we could have done better.
I wanted to talk about Qissa, one of the most emotionally draining films that we might have watched in this side of the millennium. And we spoke to Anup Sim actually about Qissa, and he said that you kind of broke the barriers between these presumed expressions of femininity and masculinity in the film. I mean, how did you do that? How do you prepare for that kind of a complex character?
Anup. He is the best director in many, many ways that I have worked with. I've worked with some really incredible directors, very lucky. What set Anup apart for me was that he introduced me to a lot of things that perhaps I would have picked up had I gone to a film school, which I didn't.
Okay.
I'm not part of FTI, NSD, anything. And my further studies have, to do with applied theater. And I was more interested in how theater can be therapeutic than in acting. So I really didn't have any training in that. So for me, Anup was my film school. Introduced me to Chinese paintings, Atul Dodia's work, great painters, masters that I didn't know of, films, Ozu, I'd never heard of Ozu's name. And, when you're in sometimes in the presence of, FTI pass outs and, film school students, and they're talking about these great filmmakers, and they look at you and be like, this, and I'm like, oh shit, I haven't seen. I'm like, what? You're an actor? You haven't seen But that's like an English. I remember as an English major, I found it ridiculous when someone made fun of someone for not knowing the meaning of a particular word, you
Right.
know. And I always thought it was such a low hanging punch because what what is learning? Like today I learnt a word and you meet me tomorrow. So then when you say the word, I understand it. But had you met me the day before, I wouldn't have known the word. So, so for me, Anup came into a time in my life which transformed the way I looked at everything I had lived before and everything that I lived after because he gave me so many tools that I could apply in any film I did after that, you
Mhm.
know. And for that I'm very very grateful. And if I didn't fall for a stereotype of a man, masculine or feminine justice, it's because of Anup, because he said I don't want you to, because I was very skeptical of his casting, even though I was delighted to be a part of a film and not be unemployed. But I was skeptical of his choice because I thought he would have done better had he cast someone who was taller, at least.
Right.
uh, and he said, no, he said, I don't want you to. And I kept asking him if I could watch something that could help me, you know, boys don't cry, like, your usual tropes of where a woman has played a man or there's been some kind of um, intersectionality of gender. But he said, no, no, I don't want you to. And he said, I don't want you to play a man. I just want you to play a child who wants her father to love. That's all. You will do anything so that your father loves you. That's it. That's the only impulse. And that really freed me then from um, wondering what a man does or a woman does. And yeah, took the burden off. Um, and that's why it was what it was, because of Anu.
Also, tell us. I mean, you worked with Irfan Khan in that film, and what a beautiful chemistry the two of you had. If you remember anything from
How
that,
can I forget?
yeah, of
How can I
course.
forget? Yeah. He's many things about that friendship, and it really became a friendship on the set of Qissa because of Anoop, the way he held us all together, and the warmth with which he held us together made many things very very memorable. And I think um, Irfan, memories of him, and he are very active agents in my bloodstream, yeah, on a day to day. His preoccupation with the larger macrocosm and the universe, which seemed like some atel poetic nonsense uh, at that time, is something that I totally get it. I totally get it as I've, you know, in the last 5 years, as I've grown up after, this tectonic shift that happens in your life after certain incidents. And in my case, it was my mother's illness and diagnosis of, with cancer, and her having beat the disease and lived the way she's living today is makes me fills me with wonder, and also makes me think of the truth of many things that Irfan shared, which I thought was whatever. At that time, when you are as successful as he was at that time, then it's easy to say all these poetic things, I thought, you know. But actually, it has nothing to do with success at all or failure, because I mean, it is something that the what we see with our eyes often becomes is not enough when you're going through a tough phase in your life. It's the unseen things that we don't usually see, that come to fore, when you are in a situation which is unprecedented. And that's when I started communing with birds and trees, and I realized that, oh, this is what he was doing. This is why he would sing to a tree, Makes complete sense. Makes complete sense because, and I think COVID also did that, right? COVID like isolated us, made us realize we are social beings, and that there's a interconnectedness between us, and our class. Our class dynamics came to huge question as our households came to a grind, and we found out that we really can't survive because without this interdependence, you know. Um, and so I think COVID, Mars, battle, um, all these things I think made a lot of my exchanges with Irfan come alive uh, with with a fresh um, with a fresh energy and power, um, and also about I think the other thing I would say about him, uh, besides that he's communicating with things around him, is what he had told me, which I've repeated I think many times. But when I used to whine about not having any work, um, and angry that he had so much, um, and he would listen, but after some time he would just like, listen, stop being such a Meena Kumari, this tragedy queen. He said, no one likes being around someone who is sad and pathetic. So get over it. It's tough for everybody. And build yourself, have fun, be curious about things, build yourself. And don't worry about what others are thinking about you, when you will get work. It'll come. It'll come. And I just thought, what rubbish. And only a person with a lot of work can say that. But it's true. What can, what, that's exactly what happened. You know, in the long periods of no work, that's exactly what I did. I had to build myself. I had to build my sense of identity as a daughter in taking caregiving of my parents, and, value the community that supported me during that very difficult time in Pune, strangers who came to my aid, and helped to make sure that my parents didn't starve, and that they got medicines. I mean, I can't put to words right now what those 2.5 years, intense 2.5 years, how it just changed my relationship with people, and then yeah, everything he said kind of made sense. Yeah.
And do we hear it right when it said that you actually spoke about him to Mira Nair to cast him in The Namesake?
No, no, not at all. I didn't ask her. I didn't even know when she was making Namesake. What happened was, because we were shooting for a German film
Okay.
called Shadows of Time, Shomar Chaya, it
Yes.
was in Bangla, in Calcutta. And at that time, I had just come off working on Monsoon Wedding,
Hmm.
and it was my second film. And it had been 15 years since he had done Salam,
Right.
Bombay or more.
Right.
Right? And so asked me if he said how Mira had promised him that she would give him a big part, but it has been 15 years since. And he said, you just worked with her. So can you send me her? Can you write to her that I'm trying to get in touch with her because I'm sending her emails and she's not responding? And then I checked his email. It was an outdated email. So then I sent Mira an email saying I worked on this film and this actor, and he wanted to get in touch with you. That's it. That's all I did.
And what a film it turned out to be.
Indeed, it was the film that I saw in New York, and I got so homesick. It was like the last straw that led me to come back home. You
Oh,
know?
okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you that you have worked with a renegade filmmaker like you in Tasher Desh and
Yeah.
Ludo. What has been the experience like? And why do you think, unlike some other cinema loving countries, underground cinema has never really flourished in our country?
Look, it's tough to make a film. Period. I mean, for those 20 years, the reason they were so far and few is because it takes so long to mount a film and make it the way you want to make it in the language that you want to make it in and not make it Hindi, you know. And even within Hindi films, if there's a certain kind of exploration that is, it's tough anyway. It is tough for Q, it's tough for anybody. So that's just how it's been. And um, for me, the reason to work with Q at that time was because I completely trusted Tanaji Das Gupta, who was working on that film. And we had worked together on this film called The Waiting City. And I noticed that he was part of the one of the ADs on that film, and I just saw the way he worked, and I knew that he's going to do amazing things, and he's an amazing person. And so when he was working with Q, and I just it was just a very instinctive decision. And look at Tanaji. I mean, he's one of the producers on Lapata Ladies and did Hungry before that. And, is just a tremendous mind and an incredible human being. So it was really Tanaji that led me to working with Q. And it reminded me in many ways of that. It's nice to work with filmmakers, all kinds of filmmakers, because after Monsoon Wedding, when I moved to Shadows of Time and this German filmmaker, after the warmth and Punjabi large-heartedness of Mira to a German director, I was initially quite thrown off by how cut and dried, it was, because the style was so diametrically opposite to Mira's that it threw me off. And that's when I realized that if I really want to do this, I must be able to expose myself to various styles of direction, even if it is uncomfortable. And I think you don't get uncomfortable um, when you are used to change, right? Then you accept the fact right at the beginning and outset of the journey that's going to be something that you don't know much about. And I'm very glad. I'm very glad I did that. And because he has a unique way of working, right? And like I remember when I on first day of shoot, of Tashir Desh, all these Robi Thakurer, all these complicated lines in Bengali, and being a Probashi Bangali, my mother said, "Ki mane jai kor, don't mess up the Bengali because that will hurt our pride. Whichever other language you mess up, we don't care." So I had learned all these lines, and I was quite tensed about day one, as always, because day one is critical in any project. And they were going to shoot something else, and they took really long. So, but they told me that this is the room of the Rani, and so you can see the room and see what you want to do in it, and blocking will come and do it. So I was there, I did my lines, sat in front of the mirror. There was a big bed, there was a glass, a silver wine glass kind of thing. I poured some liquid into it, held the glass just because she's drinks a lot, the queen. That's how the character was. So playing, and then I got bored, and there was a bed, so I was like, okay, just let me sleep, or let me lie down. So I lay down, holding the glass in my hand, and I thought that I won't fall asleep because the moment I fall asleep, the glass will slip and I will be able to wake up. So I held the glass and I lay down, and I don't know how much time passed, but I suddenly woke up because the glass slipped from my hand. So I woke up and I just turned and I saw the camera was on already, you know. And I turned this way and I saw the camera. There's another camera on this side as well. They had come into the room, saw me sleeping, and because I was already in costume, they started shooting. And no cut, no action. Sorry, no action, no cut. And that was Q's way of working. And uh, it's really important also, I think, for an actor to um, experiment with different styles and not get stuck in some kind of stasis that this is the only way. This is the only way.
If I have been asked what's my favorite role of yours, I will toggle between Kissa and Sir. And maybe on more days it would be Sir, because that film is such an outstanding film, such a coming of age love story. I mean, and one of the most striking aspects of the film for me was the dignity of Ratna. I mean, how in every step, from frame one itself, how she has this immense self respect. How was that? How did you perceive and bring it to your performance?
It was all Rohena, because that was the one through line that she gave for the character of Ratna. She said that the way she wants this film made, there can be many different women and many, like a woman other than Ratna could have reacted to the situation very differently. But for her film, for her Ratna, it was very clear to her that she wanted the through line for this character to be dignity.
Hmm.
It's something she told me. She spelt it out. So
Okay.
what you felt is because that was the input. That this is the rag I want throughout. Whatever she goes through, good or bad, she never loses her sense of dignity.
Hmm.
And that is her purchase, that is her kryptonite. That is her superpower. And that was very important for her because she was quite aware of the dynamics of the show is so close to in mainstream considerations only seen in the world of pornography or uh, very manipulative situations. For her it was very important that this plays out and in a way that is um, that she desired it to, and for that, her dignity had to be the through line. So I just followed that instruction.
When you read the script for the first time, I mean,
Mm.
see, it's not a film like made as a fantasy, right? It's a very real life cinema, the way it is made. How did you conceive, how the way the relationship is going? Because it's not easy, right? We don't see these stories often. So was it
Yeah,
something that you had to work out to get it, sync with
of
the
course,
character?
like in every script, you know. I mean, Rowan had already written down everything, every beat, right? So now for us, it is to figure how do I want to play Ratna, and even in that, she has said, whatever choices you make, the through line needs to be dignity, you know and and that was something initially, of course, I resisted, because I mean that's my process. I have to understand something before I can apply it. I'm like, why does she have to be dignified? Why can't she lose her temper? Why can't she do this? She said, that's not my film.
Yeah.
I said, the lady, Lata, who takes care of us and they just scolds us for not finishing our food, not doing this, not doing that, you know so why can't I also? She said, well, that's not my film. For what I want to explore and where I want to take, it's very important that Ratna dignity is such is so extraordinary, uh, that there's nothing much you can do to take it away, because it's something that is in her DNA, and that's what makes her so rich and makes her so captivating, uh, even though her means may be limited. You know, it's what I think why people connected to her, because I think they see themselves. I mean, every day, countless people go through extremely indignifying situations just on their way to work daily, and yet have a sense of composure. What is that, man? If not dignity, you know? To still be able to laugh, smile, take care of your responsibilities, your family, and work, uh, you know. So I think that's why people related to it, and I see the wisdom really of Rohena's note. You know,
Right. That's why I think Ashwin also falls for her. I mean, that dignity is what
yeah,
maybe
you
on the
can't,
point.
yeah, you can't buy it, no matter how much money you have.
Also, tell us how do you work on your accent and diction? So in Kissa, it's the Punjabi. Here you was Marathi. In Patal Lok too, there's this so nicely put, northeastern. There is an accented kind of an Hindi. So do you work on the accent when you choose
Yes,
these roles?
I have to work hard on everything. This is my story of my life in school, college. While friends studied in 1, 2 hours and got high marks, I have to study for 1, 2 weeks because I'm a slow learner and I need time. And time has always been a good friend. I've always lived in life in a way where I have time. So even for qissa, I learned Punjabi for 9 months. So I had classes, and even for sir, I had a Marathi teacher, and for Patalok also, I had a wonderful dialect coach called Anungla. She was a cultural researcher that Sudeep and Avinash had hired. And it was really refreshing to hear from them that they had actually given her the power and on set that if she found anything in the monitor that didn't represent Nagaland well, she could veto it. So she had the power to say that this doesn't work. And so she taught me Nagamese. So Sudeep and Avinash had told me that there are some Nagamese lines when she's at work. She is, of course, Assamese. She's Meghna Barua, and she's Assamese who's married to a Naga man and works in Nagaland. So she has picked up, the language uh, because of her partner and her work. So these were the facts. So he said, what we just want is you to learn the Nagamese lines, which are a few. But when I started learning the Nagamese lines, it occurred to me that um, because one day Anungla, while teaching me, said, there's something in your something. I'm getting a very Assamese thing. So I was like, you know why? I said it's because for Rima Das and I was supposed to do a film which never happened, and for Rima Ba's film, I started learning Assamese, and then
Okay.
the film never happened. And years later, this Patalok comes, and a Assamese character, and so then I realized that, oh, I can lean into that. So then I started working on my English and Hindi both, because when a person is not an actor and they speak in their mother tongue exerts a force on whichever language they speak. You know, uh, unless they're of course experts in you know erasing themselves and what actors do, but. Uh, so I decided to have a tonal consistency in Meghna Barua's character by giving her English and Hindi, um, how an Assamese person would do. But these are tricky negotiations because a little too much and it's a caricature,
Yeah.
And so I asked, and because Sudeep has grown up in Assam, I trusted him completely. And because of Avinash's aesthetics as a filmmaker and that just incredible team that I was part of, and because Avinash is also operating the camera, and he's really looking at the performance so closely. Uh, I had asked, Sudeep that first day, first shot for Meghna. I told him I'm going to try this because she goes and introduces herself as Meghna Barua and to Hatiram and Ansari, and I told him I'm going to try it, just hear it and see if it works. Then I'll keep it through it. Uh, and it's a very light touch. So, and he was like, yeah, let's keep it. But it was not what was expected. It was just something that I felt it was fortuitous because I had prepared for Rima's film, and that's how yeah.
Right. So that film is not happening. We have heard about this collaboration
I
before.
mean, I hope it happens, but it's like, both of our lives got busy. COVID happened. My mother fell sick. Her father, it was a very tumultuous time, and I know we wish each other well, and I would be very excited to work with her. And I think I still am very hopeful that, we will be able to do this together. There's no reason why. I think it's just a matter of timing.
We hope that
Yeah.
happens for sure.
Yeah. Me too.
We have been working on a video essay about the desires of women in this age of control. Inspired by watching like three beautiful, brave Hollywood productions from last year, like we saw Challengers, The Substance, and The Baby Girl, and Baby Girl. And while preparing for this interview, we realized how you have portrayed the desires of women in Tribhuvan Mishra the same year, and earlier in The Mirror from Love Stories. Even Qissa, Sir, or Delhi Crime 2 have voiced these female desires through your characters so beautifully. But there seem to be rare narratives centered on female desire in our cinema, despite the multitude of films released every year. Why do you think that might be the case? And is it a conscious decision to take these roles when you choose these characters?
Yes, because they feel age appropriate. I think we are so obsessed with women. If at all we think of women, we are obsessed with them when they're young, uh, and of a certain kind of beauty, uh, and preferably of an upper class, and that obsession, and you know, I don't belong to any of those groups. Uh, I'm in my mid 40s, and so I'm very excited by these roles and characters because uh, once a woman's body and a reproductive function begins to shut down, it seems like her life has been pushed to a zone of disinterest. And neither in fiction, nor in medical research, nor in, you know, there is on. It's almost like a cloak of, just a shroud is put on us, and our desires. Forget our desires. Are there be like there's no sense of agency, you know, uh, that women are given, and as you know, menopause is something that happens in three species: humans, elephants, and I think the killer whale. And the reason women, the older of the species in elephants and whales um, are, are you know, are given so much respect is because beyond the ability to give life, uh, what is more precious than that? For them, it's the wisdom, it's the experience, that uh, that the elder of the species have in them, which is more tactically important than just the act of giving birth. And so this 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 really it fascinates me. It fascinates me how society cares so little for the desire of an older woman and is so uncomfortable with it, to the point that they don't want to acknowledge that it exists. But as we come of age, as women in their mid 40s, if we don't tell these stories, who will?
The other thing, Tilotama, like, if I talk about River and Mishra, it's very beautiful the way dance becomes, a vent of that desire. It's so beautiful. I mean, what was the creative idea behind that? And I also wanted to ask, just out of curiosity, dance as desire is something we see in all of these mainstream films, as in item numbers and songs and all, in a very different way. There's no iota of female gaze in anywhere of
Yeah.
them. So, what is your feeling about that, and how do you look at it?
It's really the mind of Puneet, who was the creator and writer of that show and director and Amrit, who directed it. But when Puneet wrote this show, for him, what was really important is the interiority of women's lives, you know, and it was for him the dance was a metaphor, I suppose, of a man who is willing to listen to what a woman really wants. You know,
Okay.
he danced because she um, loves to see Shah Rukh and these heroes that she has in her mind. She loves the way they romance, and that idea of romance, which is so far fetched, is something she desires because she feels the absence of any warmth in her marriage.
Mm.
And because her husband is not listening and not interested in what she wants. So, when she asks him that, will you dance for me? Uh, it is, that scene is about a man who actually listens to what a woman wants and actually wants to fulfill that desire. You know, it's a small, big thing,
That basic, yes.
that basic. Just listen. What is she asking for? What does she want? Can I do it? Would it kill me to do it? Would it make me less of a man if I did it? Yeah.
We really don't know how to explain the beauty and the sexual complexity of the mirror. We have never seen anything like this in Indian cinema. I don't know whether we will. So tell us about your first reaction when Konkona read you the script on your off day or night manager.
Amazing as usual, because she was performing every part and I felt like I'd already seen the film. And she's uh I mean, really, like, she is a dear friend, but I really, really admire her mind, just how sexy it is, and how she thinks, and we are the same age, so we are preoccupied with similar concerns, and and I think it's something that it's just right, to do these parts at this age, because it feels like finally I'm doing something that is age appropriate, as opposed to trying to be younger or trying to be older, because in this middle phase of our life, nobody's interested in telling stories. So when Coco decided to take on the hardship that comes with being a director and wanting to tell a story about female desire the way she wanted to, it was a sigh of relief to finally be um, able to express the complexities of this time that no one seems to be interested in, you know. Uh, and and I think it was that work that, I think what it also made me feel, and that also then led to, I think, my life being ready for a Tribhuvan Mishra to come in and to take that further. Um, I mean, it's really, I mean, that just bodily inhabiting Ishita and working with someone like Amrita Subhash, um, and a team like that, and Coco. I mean, it was. Um, I know it was a short film, but it felt like a major milestone in my career, and it was exhilarating to, also stylistically, the film had the initial bit of it until the confrontation felt like a cat and mouse thing. They're hiding, there's something going to happen, and what's happening, and uh, it felt like there's a heightened sense of performance that Konkona wanted, where, like, where she's hiding in the staircase, and, like, this has happened, and this is certain, which is not my grammar of performance. It's much more, uh, so to move, I felt like stylistically there were many things happening in the film that were so different and refreshing, to move from that slightly heightened kind of performance to when it becomes, after the confrontation and the fight, it takes on a different kind of tone, and to experience both of that in a short film, uh, you know, it really, like, it didn't. The experience of it was so rich, that, and it was so transformative, and I was amazed at every little thing that she had thought of. Pooja and Tolani, the writer, and Coco and her team, the art design, the way you see what the mirror became a portal of, you know, female desire, and of watching ourselves watching, and it was so meta, and yet done with such gentleness, because she herself is an actor and she wanted her actors to be very, very comfortable. And she went out of her way to make sure that the set was safe. It was a closed set, that very few people, that the rehearsals were all the positions of sex that Amrita and her husband have to do in the film were all rehearsed. So that there's no ambiguity left, and that the actors have the space in non-shoot time uh, to be able to express whatever they're comfortable with and not comfortable with, and it was really like which is why, because I saw the way she worked, which is why when Puneet came to me with Tribhuvan Mishra, I had all the how you're storyboarding it, how are we doing the intimate scenes. I could ask all that because I'd already seen how Coco had worked, and Puneet made me so comfortable, with the whole process that I felt finally I thought of all the women before us who had to probably do all this without that kind of sensitivity and handling, and how lucky I am that there's so many who have walked before us, to be able to, for us to enjoy this, at this point, for me to have that opportunity to work with directors that make me feel creatively absolutely free because the set is safe.
She makes you look so beautiful. I mean, with due respect to everyone else, I mean, be it
Yeah.
in a Death in a Gonj or in the mirror, I mean, it's something different.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is what we tell ourselves that, maybe the mainstream doesn't think we are beautiful, but at least we find each other very beautiful. So and maybe it comes from that. Like, do you find someone beautiful? And then if you see it, then the others, it's how she sees me and how I see her. And that's a gift. And I'm so glad, um, uh, you know, that she believed in me to be a part of Last Stories, you know. Yeah.
Could you talk us about your latest film, Bakshabundi, competing in Berlin Perspectives this year?
Um, it's a hugely exciting feeling. Most of my first 20 years of my career, I survived because of international film festivals. They were the home to many of my films. And so, but in all these years, I've never been to Berlin. And so this will be my first time. And, uh, and I'm very excited because the directors of the film, Tanushri Das and Sauminanda Sahi, are such incredible human beings and artists that it's been a real privilege. It's been a real privilege to work with them, and I'm so grateful to them uh, that I will be embarking on this journey to Berlin, a first for me. So yeah.
And I mean, it's a great time for Indian cinema as well, with Payal winning in Cannes
Oh
last
my
year.
God. Oh my God. Look at what the women are doing. It's an evolutionary leap, you know. And with
That's right.
Pile's film, All We Can Imagine is Light, and Suchi's Girls Will Be Girls, Santosh,
Yeah.
Pooja Sir. Uh, yeah, it's really heartening. It's really, really heartening. I mean, look at it. You talked about female desire. Look at the role of the mother in Girls Will Be Girls.
Oh, yes. And how beautiful
You know,
Kani is. Yeah.
like a knife turns in you, while you're spectating that scene, and she asks him to come and sleep in the room. The judgment that arises from the pit of your stomach. Uh, what is she doing? Why is she doing that? And and they just talk.
Just talk.
And
Yes.
then you judge yourself for judging her in the first place. I mean, I can't even begin to describe. Like, I mean, this is us growing up, us finally talking about the older woman who's not young enough and not old enough to be your grandmother and tell you tales. She's somewhere in the middle, and she has been forgotten for long. And I am so grateful that uh, that women filmmakers are talking and about this time of our life, which has been, like I said, relegated to a zone of absolute disinterest. You know.
Right.
I think we are towards the end of the discussion, I suppose. Tillotama, it was such a pleasure to have interacted with you and learned. It's always wonderful to listen to you talk. You're always so eloquent, and like when you talk about your films and the roles, the keenness of your work comes out so beautifully. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope we could do this again sometime in the future.
Yes, I would love that. I would love that. And yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.